ladies, gentlemen, and extraterrestrials, to another exciting episode of the Humansplaining podcast. I'm joined today by Philip Wade, who's been on the show before. And Philip has a retreat center. He hosts frequent meditation groups online and offline. Philip, welcome back to the show. And maybe you can start off talking about your background, which caught my eye initially. Apparently that was inspired by a vision that you had. Do you want to share a bit about that?
Sure, yeah. Well, I'm glad to be back here and welcome everybody to the show. It's nice to be back. So what you can see there in the background is what I call the Universal Studio, and it's actually built as actually as an addition to our house. Our house had a granny annex before. And a few years ago, we were actually considering downsizing, but in the end, that didn't happen. And had the sort of insight that we needed to grow into the space here. So ended up both on the same night. I had a vision of this space, and my wife had a vision that we needed to grow into the space. And we'd been working with an architect, and basically it kind of gave us the impulse to go with this radical plan of demolishing the granny annex, rebuilding this fabulous space that you can see behind me here, which is an oak and glass construction, 5 meters by 5 meters internally, with a huge, very, very high cathedral-like pyramidal roof, with roof lanterns, so it's lots of light coming in. And in addition to that, we built what I call the Hall of Light, and then an art studio for my wife, and a new bedroom. And if we use it as a retreat stroke meditation center, it was finished at the back end of last year, and we also did the grounds around the house. We're fortunate to have quite a lot of space living in a rural part of England. And so we've created a Zen garden, which I'm not sure whether it's your reference, but anyhow, on that side, going out, there's a doorway onto a Zen garden, which has got a water feature and so forth. We've got a spiral garden around the back that way, which is like a meditation space. And then we've got what came as an insight, the Gladstones meditation circle, which is a pile of sandstone rocks from a local farm that they were digging up to create some foundations for a new building. And we took them and created this rock seating circle made out of the rocks. It's fantastic, actually, what the guy did. And then there's a summer house and a woodland garden, and then another meditation space. So it's kind of all a purpose-built space for people to come for self-realization stroke meditation gatherings. It's amazing. We can't quite believe it's part of our house, but here you have it.
Yeah, there's something too when you put that much focus and intention into the whole overall design of a place, that anyone who goes there, they immediately feel what the place is about. There's a retreat center here in Western Australia in Serpentine that I've been to quite a few times, and every time I go back there, it's like sinking into a nice warm bath, you know. It's just,
I know what you mean, yeah.
There's a very relaxing, welcoming presence about the entire property. Yeah, so
I can share with you, actually, if you want. Maybe we can do that. I can give you the link. There's a short 5-minute video that I've had before lockdown. We had a few events because we only just started using it this year, and there's a video which gives you a sense of the space and people's experiences. So you might be interested in that. But that sense of peace that you referred to, that's what people feel when they come here.
And that's, it's something that you've put into it with your consciousness, right? It's something that wasn't there to begin with. You've put that into the raw elements that you built it with, and now it's taken on a life of its own.
Without a doubt. I mean, it's interesting how it all came together. Even the kind of builders and so forth, who you wouldn't necessarily normally associate with sensing that kind of stuff, they could all sense it was quite special in its, or unique maybe is a better word. In it, there was something about it that was people were connecting with, So yeah, it kind of gets built into the fabric.
Which is what the place is all about, right? It's a place to
Exactly.
nurture
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
nourish consciousness.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. So it's a bit. I think with the pyramidal roof as well. If you've ever looked at anything to do with sacred geometry, it acts as like an energy concentrator. So
Mm.
it's that's also connected with the pyramids and so forth, and so you can really focuses the energy in the space.
So, what are your beliefs around particular timings, galactic portals? A lot of people talk about full moons, these different sort of astronomical, lunar, galactic events. Do you try and time meditations with that, or are you more of the mindset that that stuff doesn't matter and you should just be meditating every day anyway?
Yeah, I'm more the latter. Yeah, I'm more
Yep.
the latter. Um, I don't really have any beliefs around any of that kind of stuff. In fact, really, with everything that I share, which is on self-realization, it's ultimately beyond belief or before the idea of belief. Belief is a human construct. That's something that's outside of you. Whereas my whole thing is about realizing the infinite awareness that we all are. So that doesn't mean to say that there aren't, should we say, significant things in the calendar when there's a collective intention. But if one is the infinite awareness, these things in comparison to that are trivial. That doesn't mean to say they're unimportant. It just means that they're not it. And so for me, meditate every day, no matter whether it's 11:11 or whatever you portal or whatever you might want to sort of say. These things are there, and it's a whole energetic universe. But if you're serious about realizing your true essence, um, you'll take your focus away from those, because what that does is places power outside of you. And really, everything I share and everything that self-realization is about is realizing the infinite field of awareness that's already here, embodied as you. So I tend to caution people away from it, because it can be disempowering, spiritually speaking.
I agree. I probably fall somewhere in the middle, but more closer to your end of things. I think that, like you, it's better to establish that discipline and establish a regular meditation practice.
Yeah.
But if you happen to come across one of these dates, why not do a bit more meditation on those days?
Oh yeah, I mean, I don't have any problem with that. It's just when you place that as your central focus, and this is whatever, then I think you're going to suffer. Um, so I don't have any problem with people meditating on the full moon, or there's a specific date. People talk about different portals, but it's never been a key focus of me, and actually, as the realization flowered, it was really confirmed that yes, this stuff is there, but it's not the central focus. So I don't ignore it in the sense of completely, but my focus is what is the power that's within you now.
Yeah, I think we're on the same page there.
Yeah, we are. Yeah, I think so. Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, we talked about the I am presence last time. And for those who tuned in, you got a chance to practice if you did it at home. So, although practice is kind of one of those weird words, right? Because it's something that we always are. It's just we are remembering who we are. But
Correct.
I suppose what we're practicing is the letting go of the things that we've habitually built up to distract us from that. So there is a practice element of it, but we're not practicing to become enlightened or practicing to become the I am presence. We already are that. It's just we're becoming more cognizant of it.
Yeah, that's good. A good summary you've given there, because, and I like to express this as sometimes I use some phrases to try to help make a point to people. And one of the ones that came to me about this was the purpose of all spiritual practice is so you don't have to. And what I mean by that is, practice at being who you really are, because we are already this, I call it infinite silence, because that's how it emerged as a name to be referred to in me, or infinite consciousness or infinite awareness, whatever you want to call it. It is ultimately seen or realized, hence the term self-realization, that one is that, and that's non-personal. So the practice that we do, meditation being the primary example that people do, it starts off or appears when you're beginning, at least, that as something that you do. You sit down, you meditate, or you lie down and you meditate. But eventually you realize you are the living meditation, the living awareness. And so the practice is like a bridge. It's like a bridge to the realization of what's, and then it becomes effortless or practiceless, or it's the practiceless practice then. So yeah, I'm completely, with where you're going with that. It's the practice is to realize what's already here.
It's a good point. Would you say that maybe a benchmark to let you know that you're on the right track would be that when you meditate, you find that listening to guided meditations is becoming more distracting than helpful?
Definitely. Yeah, I think people will start. There's a bit, maybe just clarify that a little bit. I mean, guided meditations can be very mindy. They're focused and distracting, as you say. And really where you want the space where you want to be heading with meditation is to be listening to the silence, to be completely still. Having said that, it depends to some degree on where the guidance is coming from. If you're using lots of visualization ideas and so forth, and a lot of mind-based stuff, then that will be distracting from the ultimate realization. However, if the pointing is coming from recognizing presence, stillness, and awareness, which is what I do with my infinite silence, in quotes, guiding, then that's different, because what that does, that will take you to a space of recognition of what's here. I still prefer, on the whole, to take people where they can become completely silent. But what I've found over the years is guidance to recognizing presence or awareness is helpful for those that, should we say, haven't realized or recognized it yet. There's a lot of meditation out there that is really ultimately will help a bit, but it won't take you to presence or awareness, because it's coming from here, mind-based stuff. Whereas the key focus of meditation is to bring you to that space of recognizing awareness, realizing awareness.
And that's not a physical space, is it? It's
no, yeah. Absolutely. It's beyond space, beyond time, beyond indeed all phenomena. And that's where the problem with the guiding can be. If you're focusing on phenomena, then that's not it. Even people talk about bliss and so forth. That's not it either. That is a phenomena. It's anything that is seen or observed or witnessed isn't it.
Would you say that bliss is a signpost that you're on the right track, though?
Definitely, yeah. Indeed, every phenomena, in a way, even the most mundane, is a signpost or an indicator. But an experience of bliss definitely is saying, yeah, keep going this direction, but be careful here because there's a spiritual trap here, because your mind will go, oh, I like some more of that, but that's not what you're looking for. What you want to go to the space is, where has that phenomena arisen from? So the perfumes, for instance, of this infinite awareness or infinite silence, we use words like peace, joy, grace, gratitude. You could even use the word bliss. These are the natural arisings, but they're not it. So if there's a blissful experience, then this is saying, yeah, you're on the right track, keep going. But don't become, because it's a trap, a bliss seeker.
Yeah, absolutely. That's something the Buddha warns of as well, right?
Yeah, exactly. Because and people do that. Oh, and it's ultimately a trap, because then you're striving or searching for more of that phenomenal experience, and that in itself is a form of suffering.
And same with seeking wisdom, according to the
Yeah,
Buddha. Even that's
correct.
a trap. Yeah.
Yeah, it is, because the wisdom, that's exactly right. The wisdom naturally flows or emerges from that silence within, that awareness within. I'm equating silence, infinite silence, with awareness. They're both the same. So when there's a call, that will just naturally and effortlessly arise. It's not, you don't learn wisdom. Sometimes I'll say, I never taught anybody anything about self-realization. All that happened was that they realized what was already there. Yeah. So you don't learn wisdom, you only realize that.
I find it hard to do podcasts with you sometimes, because I feel I can either listen to you on the level of the intellect and it produces one kind of conversation, or I can listen to you in my heart and then I just don't have any words left. So
Yeah, it is an experience that people have reported with me before, because we know, the thing is, we know this stuff, so when it's flowing from this inner space, this inner stillness, the awareness, in a pure form, if there's an openness or a receptivity in you to that, then it's inevitably going to try to transport you to that space, because there's like a resonance that's already there
it's
in you.
highly contagious, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
We need to lock us all down and get us meditating together. So yeah, just before, I wanted to ask you about maybe some of the other traps. Maybe people that are in this lockdown, maybe they're starting to meditate for the first time because they realize they want to go within now, because they realize everything coming from the external environment can't be trusted, can't provide them that bliss. We talked about bliss seeking. Maybe they've been looking for bliss in the wrong places. So they look within, they start meditating. What are some of the traps that are going to pull them off? Because I think things like bliss and wisdom, maybe they're higher level traps, for lack of a better term. They're things that you encounter a bit later on the road. What are maybe some of the traps that you encounter early that maybe convince you that you can't meditate, or it's for someone else?
Yeah, it's a good question, this, because I see this quite a lot. I mean, people will turn to me and say, I can't meditate, or if I've never meditated, they'll say, how it's not for me, kind of thing. And this is just almost like the first trap that one comes across, if you like. I can't do this, or I can't meditate, or my mind is so busy. And so because everybody's been conditioned into listening to what's going on up here rather than the stillness within the heart, they'll take that as gospel, so to speak, or as a belief, and they'll make it true for themselves by, personalizing it. I can't do that, and it becomes a belief and it gets reinforced. So this is a trap, and a key trap. Or I've tried meditation. I heard somebody say, I think it was Oprah Winfrey. I saw a bit of an interview with her once, and somebody said about meditation, I tried that once for 10 minutes and nothing happened. It's kind of like, a representation of the modern world, this kind of instantaneous kind of whatever result kind of thing. But the thing is, we've spent, however old you are, 20, 30, 40, 50 years being conditioned into listening to what's going on here. It's going to take some time, and it's going to take a bit of practice. So this is a trap. Just, I can't do this. This is just a belief. The fact is, we are the living meditation. Another aspect of that, and it actually came up on a live stream meditation the other day, was that somebody was having difficulty about moving on from the busyness that goes on up here. And what it allowed me to do was to share this, which is also a deep awareness. It's actually a really profound awareness, this, much more important than anybody might conceive of when they first hear it. But she was basically reporting this busy brain, busy mind. And I said, the mere fact that you can report this, share that with me in a written comment, it was on a Facebook live stream, means that there's a higher awareness that's observing it. And so that means that actually you're not, which is what most people do, identify with the racingness. Actually, the racingness is being observed. So now we're onto something incredibly important, because that means that you actually are that witness or that higher awareness. And that one observation or insight is enough actually to take you to the space of the realization of the self, because essentially that's what's fundamentally going on. Awareness just simply watches neutrally, silently, and effortlessly, and that's the realization that one is what ultimately emerges. So that's like that trap that occurs early on. I can't do this. And when you start to meditate, this occurs. You suddenly notice the busyness that's going on. But that's also saying to you, actually, you're the watcher. You are the awareness. So this is a big trap. And then there's other facets that are expressed in different ways. The single biggest trap, the single biggest block to the realization of the self is the belief that you are the body-mind. And in fact, I'll go as far to say that is the only trap. Every other trap and every other block that's encountered on the way is simply a subset of that one. It's simply a subset of that one. And that relates to that busyness thing, because that's associated with the body-mind. So, but then if you recognize that there's an awareness that's watching it, that automatically tells you that you can't be the body-mind. But people go on to believe that they still are the body-mind because they're so invested in the identity.
That really comes down to it, isn't it? It
Yeah,
does come
absolutely.
down to an investment. I've
Yeah,
noticed
investment.
this
Yeah.
with politics as well. Like nowadays, things are so polarized that people can't change their minds because they're so invested in their opinions.
Mm, exactly.
Even when the evidence is overwhelming that they might be wrong about something or at least one detail, they don't even like to backtrack on the smallest things because it could unravel the whole thing that they built up in their mind.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. We invest in our beliefs, and all the beliefs are built up on this first one, the fundamentally flawed belief, I am the body mind, and every other belief becomes a subset of that. And then the more energy you invest in that, the harder the experience becomes for you to let go of it or let it dissolve, because you've put so much into it and your whole life is built around it. You become the belief system. Your living experience becomes the belief system. And belief is like an armor. Yeah, it's like an armor, that's around me. And I keep on adding to these beliefs to protect my version or view of the world. And if that's penetrated, then you feel attacked. But you're not only suffering because of those beliefs, because you're carrying them around like a weight, but you're also suffering because the self, the smallest self, is trying to protect those beliefs and preserve its view of the world, its paradigm, its worldview. And this it's constantly struggling to do, and ultimately will fail to do, because even though you may perceive that it's somehow trying to maintain this, because actually it's all life circumstances are always changing, and you're always adding more and more weight the more that you go with these beliefs.
So who's to blame for all this? Is that just a dumb question? Like, is it
No, it's not a dumb question. No.
part of our evolutionary journey as humans to develop a sense of self and then to end up creating problems from that unintentionally? Is it just an unintentional consequences of evolutionary adaptations, or what do you think is at the root of this problem?
Sure. I mean, this question comes up quite a lot when, at an event. And the way I will often respond to it is it's a process that occurs. So a form, embodies a baby is birthed into the world. And even actually whilst it's in the womb, there's some degree of conditioning going on, because, everything's energy, everything's vibration. So there's a vibrational imprint even going on from the parents and the surrounding. But relatively speaking, a baby comes in to the world, and if you notice babies, they one of the things that they do, they're forever touching all the different parts of their body, aren't they? Like the feet are in their mouth, and there's all this going on. And it starts to get the idea, there's a body here and I am this body, and that gets reinforced by the parents. And it's given a gender, so it's a boy, it's a girl, maybe it's given a religion, maybe it's given a nationality. We're all given these, and more gets added through a lack of awareness in the world in general. So I am this boy with this experiences, this religion, this nationality, da 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 da. And everything that gets added after the words I am becomes your living identity. Now, kids at a relatively young age are, relatively speaking, only mildly conditioned. You notice young kids, they're pretty joyful most of the time, and they don't recognize things like barriers that we put between ourselves at an older age, like maybe that's race, creed, religion, and so forth. That's just not recognized by kids. But these things start to get built upon. So basically, it's a function of being birthed into the body, identifying with the body, which is reinforced by parents, by teachers, by society in general, all mostly from a space of unawareness on all of in a kind of in a way innocent kind of way, because that awareness hasn't been realized by the majority of the population of the planet, and it just gets built up and built up and built up. And a kid gets into their teenage years and most teenagers go through an identity crisis because they have no idea who they are, which is one of the reasons why teenage years can be such a struggle for both parents and children, because there's this kind of, the ego identity is still forming, and it's really unclear at that stage who I am and where do I fit in this world. It doesn't stop, of course, when one becomes adult. Then we continue to build, and life experiences reinforce it. The more that we move further away from the truth, there's more traumatic events or experiences that continue to deepen and add weight to the belief systems. So pretty much everybody goes through that kind of process. Part of it is necessary in the sense of one has to be, shall we say, learn how to function in a form and operate in the world. But a lot of it isn't also necessary. If a child was born in a space of awareness, it doesn't have to have quite the same degree of conditioning as most of us experience. So it's mostly from a fundamental lack of awareness in the world in general that the conditioning occurs. And it's not kind of some kind of sinister plot, so to speak. It becomes, we realize eventually we're taking on all of this stuff ourselves by virtue of this lack of general awareness that's in the world.
So would you say it's inherently wrong to take ourselves as our body and mind, or it's just going to lead to suffering and that we can choose to identify as whatever it is that we want? Or would you say that there's a true identity?
Right. I wouldn't say wrong. Wrong isn't a word I would use in this context, because we sort of have this black and white duality type approach in life. And actually contrast is necessary for experience, because in the absolute domain of infinite awareness or infinite silence, there are no phenomena. There's no space, there's no time, and there's no contrast. So first thing that's required is being and form and space and time to create experience. Now that's nothing wrong in that. It's actually the way that the absolute, if I can call it that, chooses, if I can use that word, to experience itself. It creates this opportunity, this contextual field for experience where, so it's not wrong. Actually, the body itself, you have a man's body, I have a man's body. It's actually something that you have, but not that which you are. And if you see it as a gift through which the self, the true self, gets to experience itself, then you can operate from a space of, there's no suffering there now, because the identification with it and the belief in it and the attachment to it gets dissolved. It's also important as part of that, by the way, for the pain body or the emotional body to be dissolved, for it to fully anchor, because people can get glimpses of this, but then fall back into suffering because the pain bodies or the emotional body's not been dissolved. So actually, I see the body as a fantastic and necessary gift to create the gift of experience, because there is no experience in the infinite domain. As the realization flowered, shall we say, there was no phenomena. There was just infinite awareness. And at some point in that process, if we could call it a process, because it was infinite really, our body awareness re-emerged, and it was like a choice it was making, and a phenomenal field that started to emerge. And it was clear that one was always and always had been this infinite awareness, never not been that, and never will not be that. Yet the body was necessary to, and time and space necessary for experience. And then thus, the beauty of that then is that the self, the true self, big S, infinite self, non-personal self, gets to experience itself, and it gets the wondrous opportunity to realize itself whilst embodied in the form, because there is no experience in the ultimate domain. And they're not separate either, by the way. I'm just referring to it just for sake of language. So it's not wrong or right, it just is.
That's quite a all-encompassing view that you've taken there, and it satisfies the next question that I was going to ask, which was, well, what is the point of coming down here in the first place? So yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me, and it's something that I never really got a satisfactory answer from in previous studies. I've studied a lot of different meditation systems, I've practiced a lot of different things. But yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's very grounded, and it encompasses both this world and the beyond, if for lack of a better term.
Sure. Yeah. And because then it makes it simpler and clearer, and there's this kind of resonance, because it's not necessary to believe what I say. This is what's realized, and that's what belief isn't necessary. So, over the millennia, any, let's call it, being that has realized the self, if you listen carefully, they may say it slightly differently to how it might be expressed through me, but essentially they'll say words like, don't believe a word I say, because truth is an experience, or a realization would be even more accurate, not a belief. And so this is what is realized. And then the purpose of life in the form, life then becomes its own purpose. It's its own gift to itself. And actually, we call this life, but life is much bigger than that. Life is infinite, and life is eternal.
That's a really good point as well. I think we act as if this is all there is, and yet we don't have knowledge of what came before from an experiential level, or at least we don't remember. But then you meet people like yourself, people that have maybe had a few experiences here and there in other dimensions, or however it might be termed, and you realize they're largely unfazed by people fighting over toilet paper. Well, why is that? Maybe they know
Just say
something.
that last bit again. I didn't catch that sentence.
Being unfazed about people fighting over toilet paper. Maybe these people know something that we don't.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So unfazed, definitely, because the thing that creates the experience of being fazed by something, or having some kind of emotional response to any situation in life, whether it be, people with supermarket trolleys full of toilet paper, or whatever it happens to be, there's something that's triggering you there. That all comes back to, when you trace it right back to the root cause, comes from this what I was saying earlier about this fundamentally flawed belief, I am the body mind. Because what that creates experientially is a sense of separation from that which you are. And that creates the polarity, that, the duality experience, the poles of fear, if we call it the poles of fear and love. That separation, or sense of it, or illusion, if you want to call it that, is what creates the pole. Now, what then happens is the belief that you are the body mind gets reinforced by life experiences like I was talking about. And that builds up the emotional body, the pain body, through a whole set of experiences, often traumatic, that pretty much everybody experiences really in one form or another. There may be degrees of trauma for sure, but basically everybody's had a set of traumatic experiences. And you're carrying that around with you. And that's a very felt experience, that emotional body. And you can be triggered quite unexpectedly by pretty much anything. You know, you could be walking down the street, everything's fine with the world, and then you see somebody walking out with a supermarket trolley full of loo rolls, as you put it, and you can be triggered by that and start having opinions and get angry and upset and all the rest of it by it. And that's all coming back from a resonant energy, a dense energy that you're carrying around in your pain body that's triggering you. You might blame the other for that, but actually, unless there was that density, that frequency in you, you wouldn't be triggered by it. It doesn't, by the way, condone what is clearly, you know, a daft thing to do, you know, to buy 6 months worth of loo roll supply. You know, it's hardly a sane thing, is it? But the fact that one is triggered by it, what that's telling you is that there's something in you that you're carrying that's being triggered by that situation. And what that is, rather than being a challenge to you, is actually an invitation. It's an invitation to go, whoa, didn't realize that was there. And then you look at that, as I say, you look it straight in the eye, realizing that you are not the emotion, not the trigger. I call the process transmuting fear into love. And that pure witnessing, that pure awareness, if you allow yourself to feel that fully and witness it whilst recognizing you're not it, it dissolves it. And it is in this way that the pain body or the emotional body gets dissolved, and the realization becomes, I call it, more anchored, but it's anchored to itself, in itself, as itself. So that's why you wouldn't get triggered by life situations like that, you know, and there's plenty of triggers going on out around the world at the moment. But as the pain body or the emotional body gets more and more dissolved, less the likelihood is that you're going to be triggered by life experiences.
Yeah, I know that being a slow learner is just a false identity, but
yes,
slow learners like me that kind of zip in and out of these realizations. Sometimes I can, you know, I'll be meditating and I'll be going through my day completely unfazed by things that normally would trigger me. And then other days, everything triggers me. How do I make that untriggered state more permanent?
Yeah, I mean, it's a fair question, because, you know, we go through the, you know, we experience it as a journey, even though one is this and you're never not this. We experience the flowering or the blossoming as a journey. And so we kind of like hovering about a bit between the, you know, maybe triggered states or non-triggered states and so forth. And so, you know, everybody wants to know, well, how does that become more permanent? How does that happen? And this is where your practice, your spiritual practice, is an anchor for you, because the more that you do meditate regularly, the less the likelihood is that you're going to be triggered, because your awareness, your attention is not up here. It's much more in the heart space of awareness. So that's the gift of meditation, is to bring you back to this heart. And when I say heart space, I don't just mean your physical heart. I also mean the heart of the universe. It's, you know, there's an intrinsic or direct connection there. So this is obviously a step, but equally importantly is, if, you know, you're on one of those days where everything's triggering you, then it's important for you to stop and recognize, whoa, hang on a minute, you know, ever stray today, just stop here and look, what is it that's here now? You know, I'm feeling fearful, angry, whatever emotion you want to associate with that triggered state. And actually take that as an invitation from life to say, whoa, hang on a minute, tap on the shoulder here, have a look what's going on inside, and face it, you know, there and then. Even if whilst you're walking down the street, you can do this. You can simply go, whoa, where did that come from? This fear or this anger or this whatever. And look at that from inside, recognizing that the mere fact that it is here is an indication of something that you're carrying. And that when you allow yourself to feel it fully, don't run away from it, because this is another trap, by the way, talking about traps earlier. People will often run away, or they'll anesthetize themselves from it in some way, many ways in which that might happen. But what it is an invitation for you to stop, to look at it, to feel it fully, to witness it, and allow the energy of it to pass through. And if there's any insight that needs to come, that will naturally flow from this non-judgmental witnessing space. At first, you're going to probably have to practice doing that at home, sat in your meditation space, using a process. I've got a whole live stream dedicated to this, by the way. It's called Live Stream 11, Transmuting Fear into Love. And I've actually just recorded that professionally again, because it's quite an old stream and the video quality is not great, although everything's there. But you're going to have to do this at home first, practice with it, become used to the coming back to that witnessing space, recognizing it as an invitation, recognizing that although somebody may have done something stupid, actually you're being triggered, that there's something for you to deal with, because you can't deal with the other. You know, you're not going to be able to fix the other. It's only you can deal with. And then become familiar with that. And actually that becomes an effortless process eventually. And you can become so familiar with recognizing a trigger when it comes up, noticing it, realizing you're not it. And you could even be loading the dishwasher and getting on and watching what's going on, and going about your normal life and going, oh, this is really interesting, this. I'm going to take this invitation. The more that you do that, and the more that you make that a practice, that practice will then become effortless. And you move into a space of effort, what I call effortless grace. And you'll find you'll go through life, invitations will continue to come, because life's like that. But they won't be as big as smacking you around the head with it anymore, because sometimes life does that. You know, especially if you're not listening a lot, it can smack you around the head and make you listen. But if you really are listening as a regular, you know, not like just, I'll do this Monday to Friday, but not Saturday and Sunday, I'll have weekends off. You know, that's not going to work. You kind of need to make it a consistent thing. And the more consistent you are, and the more willing you are to face it every time, the effects on you will be profound.
That's probably, yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head there for me. That I've been meditating most days. I would like to say almost every day, probably about 4 or 5 days a week on average. But yeah, there's just no rhyme or reason to it. Like, I'll just meditate for 15 minutes one day, an hour another day, sometimes in the morning, sometimes in the evening. And yeah, I was doing it every day in the morning, and I didn't ask questions like that when I was doing it every day in the morning. So what does that tell you, you know?
Yeah, it is, yeah, indeed. And you know, and this happens, you know, but equally, what you don't want to be doing is beating yourself up. But because that's another good thing that people do. If they're ever beating themselves up, we're good at that. But now that recognizing the pattern, essentially what's happening is that your mind is convincing you that there's something more important than this that you need to be doing today. And mind is the ego mind is a sneaky one. It's as cunning as the most cunning fox. And it will use any trick in the book to distract you from the recognition or the realization of the awareness that you are. So it will try to persuade guy, you haven't really got time today, to be sitting down for meditating. You need to be doing this, doing the other, whatever. And it comes down to basically the difference between activity and action. Mind is forever constant activity, more and more activity, more and more striving, more and more doing. And its needs are never completely satisfied. It's got an insatiable desire. Whereas when you get into the meditative space, then all of that kind of busyness, doingness, neediness starts to fall away effortlessly. And you start to recognize what's truly important. And those 20 things that you thought that you needed to do today may be only significant.
Yeah. I think that's right. I think my ego doesn't like the message that actually the amount of time that I quote unquote should be doing, or at least my soul is guiding me to, is not convenient.
Yeah.
Like there's someone I'm following on YouTube called Kyle Cease, and sometimes he meditates for like 8 hours a day. And I feel like, I'd love to do that, but I've got all this other stuff that I need to do. Yeah. Sometimes I feel that call to meditate, but you're right. I'll tell myself, but I've got to do this other thing first. And then the end of the day comes and it's like, I haven't meditated. So then I'll just fit in a 15-minute meditation before I go to bed, but it's not quite the same as doing an hour in the morning.
Yeah, indeed. And it's and so that it's all the mind stuff that's convincing you of this, and you're believing it to be so. And that's where the regularity of a practice helps. If you can, certainly at first. I mean, I think it sounds like you're a fairly experienced meditator to me anyway, but the regularity, set time, set place, and so forth can help reinforce it. This pattern of 28 days that's often reported in various research, that reinforces it. If you're doing it constantly for 28 days, the likelihood is you'll continue. So this is where it's helpful, but don't just also limit the idea of meditation is another point. So the kind of archetypal image of meditation, I'm sat in the lotus position in a cave in the Himalayas, and that's how I'll become enlightened. This is complete nonsense, or bollocks, if you want to use that word. Actually, one is already that. What's awaiting here is the arising of that. And actually, if you like going out for a run, for instance, or a bike ride or whatever, that in itself can be a meditation, because to be riding on a bike or immersed in a beautiful natural environment, whether it be trees, a lake, a mountains, or whatever it happens to be, and if you're really fully present rather than listening to your headphones or whatever, then that is also can become a meditation.
Yeah, I find doing things like qigong or even just shadow boxing, if you get into a certain zone with it, it becomes quite meditative. So
absolutely,
take all those little things into account that I do throughout the day, then I meditate several times a day. So I suppose it depends on varying degrees. Obviously, if you're sitting down with your eyes closed, there's less sensory input coming in, so
Yes.
probably
Yes.
go deeper. But I guess I am meditating on some level. I probably am getting into those alpha brainwave states when I'm not sitting down doing other things. But yeah, I think that's a really good point as well. And I do have a tendency to fall into guilt about not doing things that I think I should be doing, which definitely is probably more harmful than the things that I'm not doing.
Yeah. This guilt thing is a big ego thing. You know, that's all coming from the mind. You know, so if there's guilt there, then face the guilt. You know, feel the guilt, witness the guilt, know that you're not the guilt, and it will pass. Yeah, and qigong, you use that. I mean, I did quite a few years ago now. I did a bit of Tai Chi, and very meditative practice. What's fundamentally, somebody asked me what's coming up for, I feel like I need to share. You know, if I was to say what makes the difference, somebody asked me that, a question like that. And yeah, obviously the consistency in the meditation is crucial because it does create that anchor of stillness and awareness. But what's even more, almost more important, is the willingness and the openness to this truth. And that's got to include, you know, that's got to be a deep trust in that which is, and not buying the myth and the story. You know, you've really got to be willing to let everything that you think that you know just disappear. You know, if you think that you know, you don't. I don't know if you ever came across, if you got it in Australia, did you ever come across the TV program Faulty Towers?
Yeah.
With, what's his name? Anyway, John Cleese, yeah. And the guy who played Manuel, the Spanish waiter, I can't remember what his name was now, anyway. Good actor, anyway. And but his catchphrase taught to him by Cleese in the series was, "I know nothing." And it's like that with ultimate spiritual truth. You kind of have to be humble enough to actually be recognized that actually you don't really know. You don't know anything about this. You can only realize it. You can only realize it. So there's a kind of total inner commitment to an openness to this is what's ultimately going to make the difference. A willingness to, you know, actually I have no idea really, but I just gonna, there's a trust, there's a sense of a truth here, an awareness here that somehow the perfume of that you can pick up on and follow that to its ultimate resolution.
I feel inspired to meditate.
Good.
Yeah, I don't really have a lot more that I want to talk about, but yeah, it's been great having you on. Are there any thoughts that you'd like to maybe summarize the conversation, especially in regards to people that are either brand new to meditation or are like myself and have been doing it for a while but maybe struggling a bit? Any sort of tips that you can just, words of encouragement?
Yeah, I think what I would say, you know, if you're brand new, you've heard about this, and you tend to get some, you know, people tend to get some sort of impulse. If I take my own experience, you know, I remember it was actually, I might have even mentioned this last time, I cannot remember now if I did. I remember seeing a book one day, it was the Little Book of Calm.
Oh yeah, you did mention that. Yeah.
Yeah. You get an experience like that in life and you feel some kind of call. so people new to this, that life is constantly going to give you invitations to be still and know. And there's a really big one going on right now. Whatever your views about it, it's, this is a big invitation from life. So if you're brand new to it and you're feeling, yeah, I've heard about meditation, I can see that I feel that there's potentially some benefits there, then follow that call, follow up on it, listen, take the invitation to stop and to look and to listen. I may have mentioned this last time about losing the phrase of stop looking and listening to, you learn that as a child to cross the road safely. You learn to stop, you learn to look, to listen. That's also true of meditation. And you feel that impulse, take the invitation to stop, take the invitation to look, and take the invitation to listen. And really go with your heart. We're so conditioned into going with what's going on in the head. You have this moment of inspiration, whether you're a beginner or a little bit or more experienced like yourself, who's maybe wavering a bit. But the inspiration arises, and on first awareness, it feels great. And then later on, mind tries to persuade you otherwise. Go with the first impulse. That was the one that was right. The one that's doubting, but this, but the other. Doubt the doubter. That's another important one, is to doubt the doubter. Go with the first awareness that was light, uplifting, inviting, inspiring. Not the one that's going must, should, ought to. Find a space, a place, and a meditative practice that is really resonant for you, and dive deep into that one. There's a tendency that for both beginners and people who are more experienced on the path to hop about. I call it the spiritual sweetie shop. There's lots of nice looking sweeties out there. There's this and there's that. Some of those may or may not be useful to you, but be discerning in your choice of what it is that you're using, both as a meditative practice or other things that you may be exploring. Because there's many spiritual tools out there. There's almost, too many is not the right word, but there's a lot. So have discernment in your choices, both in terms of following a meditative practice, a spiritual practice. Try not to hop about so much, and aim to dive deeper. And another very important point of inspiration, I would say, is, recognize, be totally open to the possibility and indeed the truth, even if it's not your experience right now, that you are this awareness already. You see, for me, there's no doubt I am that. There's also no doubt that you are that, and anybody listening to this is that awareness. It's unequivocally so, and it doesn't require you to believe me that you are that. It doesn't make Philip special and somebody Guy any less special. Actually, we are all this. And so for me, this is a profoundly inspirational point of view. It's not an attainment, this. It is not an attainment. It's only a realization. It's only a realization. And although the journey may have its ups and downs, and it will, it isn't necessarily a walk in the park. The benefit is off the scale. You know, there's nothing that comes close to this. Nothing in the universe that comes close to this, you know, in the physical domain. And if that's not inspiration enough, then I don't know what is really, because, you know, what I call it the greatest OMG moment, oh my gosh moment in the universe. Oh my gosh, I am that.
But I think you're forgetting it takes longer than 10 minutes.
Yeah. Well, actually, I could answer that by saying it takes no time at all. You know.
Thanks for coming on, Philip. And where can people find you besides obviously inside?
Yeah, indeed. Always meet me there. I'll meet you in the silence forever. But yeah, my main website is gatewaylocation.org. That's gateway and location, 2 words as one, gatewaylocation.org. That's a vast array of free spiritual resources there, open source. My YouTube channel, if you just Google Philip Wade on YouTube, you'll find another equally big array of videos and meditations and many live streams. And soon also available. It's actually live now, but it's not yet complete. And it's the only reason it's live is because I'm having to go back and forth with some edits. But there's going to be a new sister and focused site available probably in the next couple of months, called staroflight.org. And that will have I'll have an introductory video and 3 of the major meditation experiences that I share. Versions of those are there at the moment, but it's not complete. So those are the ways to reach me.
Awesome. Thanks, Philip. And thanks to everyone for joining us. We'll see you all next time.